Good afternoon, and welcome to the Wednesday afternoon conference call with Trusts Unlimited. This is Jim George speaking. I'm the non-attorney spokesman and facilitator for Trusts Unlimited, and I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to this call, particularly those of you calling in for the first time and those who will be listening to the replay over the next 24 to 48 hours. We're going to move quickly through this call today. There's a lot going on in the United States, in Iraq, globally. My phone's blown up off the hook. For some reason, people like to schedule other calls that I'd like to participate in at the very same time. If this call, to complicate matters worse, I have family down in Fort Myers, Florida, so we've been on the phone with them off and on this morning as they batten down the hatches. So I'm going to get right to the information today. There is a lot going on, so I've tried to distill it as much as I can, but let's see where we go with this. First, let's start talking a little bit about the situation in Iraq. We've witnessed over the last few months the inability of the Framework Coalition and the Sadrists to resolve their differences. Personally, for myself, I think the Sadrists are more concerned about the Iraqi citizen, whereas too many in the framework, not all, but too many in the framework are more aligned with Iran that covets Iraq for a number of reasons, and I'm going to be getting into that a little later in the call. But there is a newer development. There is the New Sovereignty Alliance, which is a coalition that is attempting to mediate the differences between the framework and the Sadrists, but the formation of the new government in terms of a time frame is still relatively up in the air. So that leaves us with the temporary situation that exists, and this is the government of Kazemi as Prime Minister, Salih as President of the Republic, Al-Habussi as the Speaker of the House, and I'll throw in there Galeb, that is the governor of the CBI. Now, in the past, caretaker governments have been forced to run the country because of the intransigence within Parliament. So this isn't the first time this has happened. This is, in fact, the third or the fourth time this has happened since 2003. So this intransigence is not something that we haven't dealt with in the past. But the difference now, in my opinion, is that the people that are in place as caretaker government are actually the best people that could be in place. And if I had my druthers, I just want them to represent the new government. And we'll get into a little bit more detail about that. But let's start with Kazemi, who is the caretaker prime minister. He recently spoke at the UN General Assembly. He is a very well-respected man globally. He's in the process right now of negotiating both trade and banking deals with multiple countries, and that makes absolutely no sense, the consummation of these deals, without a global currency. Neither the trade nor the banking deals make any sense for other countries if Iraq's operating under a program rate. So that right there tells me that there have been significant discussions with these leaders of the various other countries about what they can expect with regard to the reinstitution and revaluation of the dinar. Kazemi has also been very active domestically as well. He's in the process of implementing the white paper reforms. He is facilitating a substantial increase in reserve currencies held by the CBI. As a matter of fact, it's estimated now that they have $100 billion in USD. Now, this is important for two reasons, not only for the operation of the country while the dinar is in the program rate, but also a backing of the U.S. dollar, which is still a strong currency globally, really allows for the reinstitution of their currency because there is a backing for the dinar. If you look at where dinar is economically in terms of economic growth, this is another good indicator as well. Right now, in terms of economic growth, Iraq is number one in the Middle East and number 5 globally in the world. And as we all know, everyone wants to see economic growth in Iraq as a prerequisite for the reinstitution of their currency. Now we have the IMF that is pushing hard for Iraq to revalue their currency, or at least to reinstitute it in country. Now, there's some self-serving reasons behind that. The hegemony of the U.S. dollar is something that certainly in the East, but even in Europe, they want to end, and they note that the reinstitution and revaluation of the dinar means it would be depegged from the U.S. dollar and would become part of the IMF basket of currencies. So they have their own reasons for wanting to do that as well. Another benefit of going, and I'm estimating a reinstitution would be about 1-to-1 with the U.S. dollar, is that now the Iraqi citizen can operate with either the dollar or the dinar, but also it means that this would essentially eliminate the need for the auctions, because if the dollar and the dinar are essentially on a 1-to-1 basis, then there is no need for the auctions, and that's a good thing as well. Now, despite the fact that the parliament has been unable to form a new government, as I said before, Kazemi is performing very well both domestically and in terms of foreign policy. And this is why it seems to me that the dinar could reinstitute sooner rather than later. And let's not forget that the CBI is an independent body and has the sole discretion with regard to the change in the exchange rate. So if you couple the fact that the Parliament has been unable to form a new government, that the federal Supreme Court does not feel that they have the power to dissolve the Parliament, but has stated publicly that they believe that the caretaker government, under the circumstances, since the Parliament's operating extra-constitutionally, can do whatever necessary to govern the country. And because we all believe that the people that are in the caretaker government right now are essentially the people that Iraq needs in order to move forward, all of this, as far as I'm concerned, strongly suggests that we could be seeing a reinstitution of the dinar in the very near future. Now, we don't want to see it in the month of September for reasons that I've stated in the past. We don't want a reinstitution at the end of a quarter because we need confirmation on what the tax implications are, and taxes would be due on the 15th day of the following month. And if the currency should go to a float, we certainly don't want to have to exchange currency at a low float in order to pay a tax that might not even be due. But it looks as though even if the currency were to reinstitute in country, and it's questionable whether that would be a taxable event to us because it still would not be a functional currency globally, even if the currency were to reinstitute in September, probably or certainly wouldn't revalue globally, which would affect us until October. And the window for us is anywhere from October 1st to November 15th. That's the primary, or that's the window that we want, because that gives us a minimum of 6 weeks to hold the currency if it comes out of the float, and it gives us 2 months to determine what, if any, the tax implication would be if the exchange were to happen within a trust. Now, we've discussed in the past that the way we read the code, the tax would be a cap gain tax outside of a trust and would be tax deferred within a trust. However, until the IRS can confirm that for us in writing, we would have to assume it would be treated as an ordinary income taxable event, because to underpay the tax or to not pay the tax at all would result in a 100% penalty. So we'd have to pay the ordinary income tax and file for a refund citing Section 643A and B of the Internal Revenue Code. But once we get into October, once again, we have that 6-week window where if we were to see a reinstitution and revaluation, again, within October 1st and November 15th, that gives us time to hold the currency if it floats, and it gives us time to compel the IRS and the Treasury to let us know what the what the tax liability would be both in or outside of a trust. Now, this brings us to the trust itself. Trusts Unlimited over a decade ago decided to establish a trust package to assist Dinarians because we were aware of the fact that most Dinarians were hardworking middle-class individuals who, for the first time in their life, would be managing a substantial amount of wealth. And so we put a turnkey program in place to assist them. A two-phased program. Phase 1 is pre-RV. Phase 2 is post-RV. Pre-RV involves the establishment of a pre-RV asset protection trust package. Post-RV involves all of the product, services, and professional referrals that would be made available to you after the revaluation of the currencies. Now, I want to step back for a second and mention something I've discussed in the past as well. In my opinion, the reinstitution and revaluation of the dinar is definitely not an if question. It's a when question. And again, in my opinion, based on what I'm seeing right now, it seems to me that it's something that's going to happen in the relatively near future. Now, I want to touch on the reasons why I think the revaluation of the currency must happen. Let's step back for a second and remember that we are going through a series of Basel compliances. Basel has to do with the backing of global currencies and equalizing the value of currencies, not based on governments' valuation of fiat currencies with essentially no intrinsic value, but basing the currencies on Basel compliance, meaning the known reserves in that country and their ability to bring those reserves to market. So given that situation, this is why I feel strongly that not only will the dinar revalue, hopefully in the very near future, but the revaluation should be substantial. And I'd like to touch on the situation in Iraq and why I feel that way. I want to talk first about Iraq's future economically. Iraq has, well, let me put it this way. In my opinion, an argument can be made that per square mile, Iraq is the richest country in the world. It has the second largest known oil reserves in the Middle East, and it has the sweetest crude in the world. Now, what does that mean? Sweet crude means it has the lowest sulfur content. Why is that important? Well, it's important because right now as we speak, only about 2/3 of refined petroleum is used in the combustion engine. And with the increase in technology within the next 10 years, only about 60% of refined crude oil will be used in the combustion engine. As much as 40% of refined crude will be used, and in order to refine crude, you need a lower sulfur content. It makes it more easily refinable. It makes it less expensive to refine. But why is that important? Because up to 40% of refined petroleum is used in the production of glass, plastics, textiles, pharmaceuticals, electronics, and nanotechnologies. There's not enough wind and solar in the universe to produce one smartphone. So all of the green energy folks, and they're, as far as I'm concerned, they're hucksters. They know that we simply cannot function without the fossil fuel. Now, their argument would be, yes, but fossil fuels are limited and we're reducing the amount that exists globally. That's not true either. And in order to unpack that lie, we have to go all the way back to the year 1895, because that's when a large assembly, scientists were gathered, because remember, we were transitioning to the use of petroleum, of oil, as a viable energy source. In essence, we were leaving the candle industry. And John D. Rockefeller, the grandfather of the Rockefeller family, literally paid scientists to refer to petroleum as a fossil fuel. And the reason was to make the suggestion that it was limited in supply for the sole purpose of pumping the price up. But what is the truth? about fossil fuels. The term fossil fuel, and everyone uses it, is a misnomer. Petroleum is, in fact, a mineral, and it is a renewable mineral. It is created through the interaction of bacteria, algae, and plants. Water is the largest single liquid that exists on planet Earth, but petroleum, contrary to the lies that have been told, is the second largest mineral, and it's a renewable mineral as well. We are not going to run out of oil. So why the push to this quote-unquote green energy, despite the fact it's extremely expensive and extremely ineffective? Because it's a control mechanism. If you can control energy, and phase 2 of this is to control the money supply, how? We know that the fiat currency is dying. So what do the central banks want to do? They want to create a digital currency. It's all about control. They can't, despite their best efforts, federalize the oil industry, so they're going to destroy it. That's what they're trying to do. I know I'm going off message here a little bit, but it's important you understand that. And this is why the oil industry is critical, because we cannot function without petroleum, period. But in addition to the fact that Iraq has the second largest known oil reserves and they have the sweetest crude in the world, they also have the largest known sulfur reserves. So here's a country that produces petroleum with low sulfur, which is necessary for a number of reasons, but the country also has the largest known sulfur reserves. Well, why is that important? That's important because sulfur is what's necessary to create sulfuric acid, which is indispensable in any number of industrial applications. So it's an embarrassment of wealth in Iraq. Now, where is Iraq situated? It's in the Tigris-Euphrates River Delta. So for millennia, the earth has been flowing down into this delta and bringing with it deposits of precious and industrial metals and earth minerals. And because this is in a flat delta region, it's very easily mined. So we have a country with a substantial amount of petroleum. We have a country with the largest known reserves of sweet petroleum. We have a country with the largest known sulfur reserves. We have a country that can easily mine an inexhaustible source of precious and industrial metals and earth minerals. Then geopolitically, where is Iraq located? It's the gateway between the East and the West. It's a buffer between Saudis, the Sunni, and Iran, the Shias. It's a critical component in China's creation of their Silk Road Initiative. All of these reasons is why Iran covets Iraq so much. So all of these things point to the fact that Iraq is one of the most important countries, not only in the Middle East, but in the world. And because that's the case, all of these other countries are anxious to do business with it. The international agencies are anxious to do business with it and anxious to bring Iraq into the fold. The EU now has eliminated the high-risk status of Iraq and now says it's no longer a high-risk nation, opening up investment. And none of this is going to be possible if Iraq does not have a global currency. So for all of these reasons, the Iraqi dinar must reinstitute and revalue. And in my opinion, based on the sum total of all of the information, it seems to me that it's going to revalue sooner rather than later. Now, this is all very, very good news. Now, as I said before, for over a decade, we've been marketing our trust to dinarians, and we established a program for dinarians. But based on what's going on in this country right now and what's going on globally, this trust is going to be an indispensable tool for any American citizen and I'm going to explain in a little bit more detail what I mean. First, let me back up and, in summary, tell you why this trust works so well with dinarians and why this trust needs to be established prior to the global revaluation of the dinar and some of these other currencies. By establishing this trust, you will protect your privacy. That's because the assets in this trust are sealed, and the general public will have no knowledge of your net worth or your actual holdings. And because this is in a trust that's protected pursuant to the Fourth Amendment, whether it's the federal government, whether it's a criminal agency, or whether it's a civil suit in being involved, someone will have to go to a court and show cause why they should be able to pierce the trust to determine what's actually in the trust, and that's a very high bar. In addition, by assigning your currencies to this trust, you will transfer the taxable event to the trust. The IRS likes to go after low-hanging fruit. When they see that these currencies are owned by a very sophisticated trust, they know that they're not going to be able to trample on your rights, and they're also going to know you probably have very competent legal protection, so they're going to leave you alone. Third, by establishing this trust, many individuals that are dinarians have expressed to us the desire to assist family members, and in order to avoid a gift tax, they want to gift currencies to the people prior to the revaluation. But incorporated in this trust package is a gift subtrust, meaning that you can gift to friends and family through this trust. And because you're gifting through the trust, you will be able to manage, invest, and distribute the money, the post-RV proceeds, to these people. Fourth, this trust has been established in such a way as to exempt your estate from the cost and delay of probate and the federal estate tax. This is the tax that the federal government would assess in order to transfer that estate to your heirs. That tax can be as high as 65%. You will avoid all of that if these currencies are within our trust package. And lastly, this trust will protect you from civil suits as a result of bad acts, whether intentional or not, after you have acquired this wealth. Now, I go into this in much more detail in the past, but I'm going to ask you to go to our website for more information regarding that. The reason I'm moving on is because I want to talk about the fact that this trust package is indispensable if you're an American citizen based on the high tax, high surveillance state that the current administration is establishing. And these people are working part and parcel with the globalists. They wish to basically subordinate us to the whims of the global agencies, but that's not going to work. It's worked in other countries, unfortunately, even north of the border in Canada. It's working in Britain. It's working in New Zealand. It's working in Australia. They represent the Five Eyes: the United States, Canada, Britain, New Zealand, and Australia. But all of the other four of the Five Eyes do not have a constitution like the United States. So the citizens cannot be protected from what's happening. And what's happening is the willful and intentional destruction of the middle class, squeezing us in a vice of inflation and taxation. And to add insult to injury, the creation of a central bank digital currency, which means they completely control the currency, which means they indirectly and in some cases directly control our lives. We can circumvent all of that with the creation of a trust. Even the digital currency can be circumvented with the creation of this trust. Now, I don't want to get into sophisticated techniques to do that, but all of this can be done. But it's important, whether if you're a dinarian, to establish this trust package prior to the revaluation of the dinar and these other currencies. And if you're an American citizen with any amount of wealth at all, or you anticipate building your own estate over time, you're going to need to create a trust which they cannot circumvent. You will notice that the current administration, every time they do something that the American people don't like, someone files suit, a local judge rules one way or the other. It gets kicked up to an appellate court every single time. It's been a half a dozen different times. It's gone to the Supreme Court. The federal government's lost. And they're going to lose again when it comes to your protections under the Fourth Amendment. So I would strongly suggest those of you that have Dinar, contact us, get our initial no obligation package. But even if you're not a Dinarian, and we do have people listen to our calls from time to time that are not Dinarians, I strongly suggest you contact us, get our no obligation initial package. It discusses the trust, how it works. If you're a Dinarian, it explains the currencies, how you exchange and how we transition to other currencies. And by the way things are going, you may not want to necessarily exchange all of your currency into the U.S. dollar. You may want to go into some other currencies as well. But again, those are post-RV issues. We're not quite there yet. But before I go, again, I do want to thank you for taking the time to listen to this call, and I do want to give you our initial contact information again. If you get our initial package, it has everything you need if you decide you want to proceed with the establishment of your own family asset protection trust package, but you're under no obligation to do so. You can review the package, contact us if you have any questions either by phone or email. We'll be happy to assist you in every way. There will be no consultation fee. You can go to our website, which is trusts with an S, unlimitedllc.com. You can email us, which is trusts with an S, unlimitedllc@gmail.com, or you can call our phone service, which is 307-274-4122. We'll be happy to assist you in every way. We'll be happy to send you our no-obligation initial package. If you decide to proceed, we'll be happy to walk through the relatively simple process of establishing a trust. And, of course, after the revaluation, we'll be there to assist you, most notably with our post-RV seminar. We'll have our staff there to assist you with the management and funding of the trust. We'll have our tax specialists there. Our investment people will be there as well. And we will assist you on a post-RV basis in every way possible. Thanks again for listening to the call. We'll be back next week. Certainly, if something of a dramatic nature were to happen between now and then, we'll try to get out an emergency conference call and schedule an emergency. Get out an emergency email and schedule an emergency conference call. You can contact us if you wish to be placed on our email list. As a matter of fact, you just go to our website, go to the bottom, enter your name and email address, and you will be on our email list. Our next call, of course, is scheduled for next Wednesday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Thanks so much for listening, everyone. Have a great week, and look forward to speaking with you again next week. Bye-bye.